Dear students, greetings for the day. Today we will study passenger safety on ramp. This article describes the potential hazards to passengers on the apron and the possible mitigation measures. Most risks to passengers on the apron arise from the fact that the passengers are usually unfamiliar with the environment. Therefore, one of the main tasks when designing procedures for passengers is to ensure that they stay away from the hazardous areas or they are properly guided. Airport ramp safety has been given much attention recently in reports and papers by a number of safety organizations. In spite of their efforts, and those of air carrier safety departments, damage to aircraft and ground equipment and injury to personnel continue to occur during ramp operations. Responsibility for ensuring that passengers are safeguarded between the aircraft and the terminal building is shared between the airline, aerodrome operator and any ground handlers involved. It is vital that it is clear who is responsible for providing staff to supervise and/or escort passengers across the apron, and that sufficient numbers of staff are provided. Failure to supervise passengers properly may lead to accidents with serious consequences for all involved. There are two main groups of hazards to passengers on the apron: hazards to passengers outside aircraft, passengers getting lost, passengers getting hit by a vehicle, aircraft, passengers getting injured by a propeller, jet blast, excessive engine noise. Hazards to passengers inside aircraft, fire incidents during refueling, passengers getting injured inside the aircraft, for example due to an incident on the apron. At aerodromes, passengers may have to walk across the apron between the terminal building and the aircraft. This may expose passengers to hazards such as vehicles moving across the apron. The risks of injury are increased as passengers are vulnerable and generally unaware of the dangers around them. They can also get lost, for example due to ambiguous or improper markings. This greatly increases the chance they get into a hazardous situation. For example, a passenger might approach an aircraft undergoing engine checks. The engineering personnel will most likely not be aware of their presence and therefore may not divert them soon enough. In addition, passengers may leave objects on the apron which could eventually become a source for engine foreign object damage, FOD. The steps that can be taken to ensure passenger health and safety on the apron vary from aerodrome to aerodrome, but should usually include the following measures. Passengers should not be permitted to roam free. Where possible, the aerodrome operator should ensure that permanent traffic routes, for example aerodrome roads or taxiways, do not dissect the path between the terminal and the aircraft. Where this is not possible, the aerodrome operator should provide safe routes marked on the apron surface, including safe crossing points for the apron roads, and clear, unambiguous signs to indicate the route to be followed. Safe routes can be indicated by the use of movable barriers and chains, tensator-type devices, to create a temporary safe route across the apron for passengers to follow. When not in use, it is important that such equipment is properly stored to ensure that it does not become a source of FOD. Routes to the aircraft should not pass below aircraft wings or beneath fuel vents, or close to propellers or rotors of the aircraft they are boarding, disembarking, or those of aircraft on adjacent stands. Routes should also be clear of vehicular traffic around the aircraft, electrical cables, fuel hoses and other ramp equipment. Restrictions should be placed on the running of aircraft engines in the vicinity of passengers, and positive measures should be taken to protect them from excessive engine noise and jet blast. For remote stands or stands in a different location to the terminal lounge, Passengers should be transported to the aircraft by bus. Passengers should be informed of the safe route they should follow into the terminal, aircraft, for example by public announcement before they leave the aircraft/terminal. However, relying solely on informing passengers of safe routes and marking them out is unlikely to be adequate for commercial passenger operations. Whenever passengers are to walk across the apron, there should be sufficient staff to ensure that passengers do not wander away from safe routes. If staff is insufficient, then passengers may need to be disembarked or boarded in small groups which can be adequately controlled by the available staff. Passengers should be instructed to remain seated while the aircraft is taxiing to reduce the risk of injuries. While it is standard procedure for airlines to make an announcement stating that all passengers are to remain in their seats after landing until the aircraft has come to a full stop, there are passengers who choose to ignore the message. In such cases, it is up to the cabin attendants to intervene and make sure that the passengers comply with the instructions. The safety challenges of ground operations arise, in part, directly from those operations. For example, ensuring that aircraft are not involved in collisions and that the jet efflugs from large aircraft does not endanger small ones. Even more important, ground operations involve the preparation of aircraft for departure and must be done in such a way that the subsequent flight will be safe. For example, correct loading of cargo and baggage, sufficient and verified fuel of adequate quantity and quality, and the correct use of aircraft ground anti-icing facilities, where appropriate. Runway incursion may arise during or as a result of ground operations, but are covered by a separate category. Examples of safety challenges involving ground operations directly include ensuring that aircraft are not involved in collisions with other aircraft when moving and that the jet efflugs from large aircraft does not hazard small ones, ensuring that aircraft are not damaged by debris left on the aircraft maneuvering areas, ensuring safe parking and docking of aircraft, minimizing the risk of impact damage to parked aircraft and ensuring that any such impact, even if apparently minor, is reported and subject to maintenance inspection as appropriate prior to any further flight operation. Maintaining adequate surface friction on maneuvering areas. Provision of adequate signage, markings and lighting so that aircraft are able to follow their taxi clearances properly. Providing ATM capability which matches the complexity of ground operational movements. Safety challenges arising from ground operations concerned with the preparation of aircraft for departure include correct loading of the aircraft, and especially of its cargo and baggage, including any dangerous goods. Correct communication of aircraft loading information to the aircraft commander. Sufficient and verified fuel of adequate quantity and quality. The correct use of ground anti-icing facilities where appropriate. Much of the activity required in connection with aircraft handling or ground service provision may be dealt with by a collection of contractors and subcontractors rather than people employed directly by the aircraft operator. This activity can have a direct bearing on the safety of flight. Such arrangements require that effective quality assurance systems are used by both the aircraft operator and the various service providers. Many of the issues associated with human factors for highly trained professionals also apply to the various unlicensed operatives who both carry out and operationally supervise the various aircraft ground handling tasks when the aircraft is on or in the vicinity of its parking stand or gate.